All right, and we are live, guys. How's it going, Chris?
What's up, man? How's it going, Chris? How you doing?
Good, good. Busy, busy. Which busy is always good, though. How about you?
Busy is good. Sometimes busy is bad, but a lot of times it is good. But it's been a crazy few weeks, and actually had some some good things happen also, which was one of the things that we sort of worked on. So pretty cool.
Of course, and I'm glad we could definitely help you out with that for sure. Quick wristwatch check, by the way. What are you wearing?
I think you know what I'm wearing. I am wearing I'll take it off my wrist. I actually put it on a NATO strap that I've had for years, and it's the 50 Fathoms. I don't know the year
Nice.
yet. I'm trying to find out what year it is. It is a Aqualung 50 Fathoms from the
Mm.
1950s. So um, yeah, that's it.
So you hadn't taken off the wrist since you bought it?
No, I've been wearing it ever since I got it. Yeah, very
Nice,
excited
nice. Like
about
I
it.
said, I'm glad we could help you out with that for sure. For sure. Now, how long have you been collecting, and how long did you realize that that was your Grail watch?
So, Average Joe, what's up, man? The Town Watch, Kevin, how you guys doing? Um,
Slats, man.
so I started collecting probably around the age of 14,
Okay.
somewhere around that age. It was pretty early on. And what happened is um, I bought, I think it was like a Watch Time magazine or something like that. And on the cover of the magazine was a 50 Fathoms. And I remembered it. And it was always something that I didn't really know anything about the brand that young, and I didn't really understand like the history behind the 50 Fathoms or Blancpain or anything like that. And eventually, as I got more and more into watches, I remembered that watch. It was always the watch that I always thought about it. Um, and I went through phases. I wanted a Rolex. I wanted this. I wanted that. But this was the watch that I always said that I would have in my collection, and in one form or another. So either I wanted a modern one or I wanted a vintage one. But the modern ones for me are a little bit too big,
Mm.
and so when they reissued them, when the original reissues came out, they were nice. They were 40 millimeters, but they made like weird bezels on them, and those were the ones that Jean-Claude Bibier was sort of responsible for. And they put these metal bezels, stainless steel bezels that were engraved. They sort of looked like a yacht master, and I think that's kind of what they were going for. And I liked them. I didn't love them. And also, they were 40 millimeters, which is fine, but the original was 42 millimeters. So I always wanted to have a 42 millimeter version. But if you want one, they don't make it. Actually, ironically, the week that I bought this, they came out with the 42 millimeter anniversary edition for the 70th anniversary, which is an awesome watch. Um, but I think it's just phenomenal. Yeah.
It's one of those watches. Like if you know, you know. Like it's
Yeah.
not gonna be. It might not stand out like a Rolex or anything like that. But amongst like other watch geeks like ourselves, you're gonna
Yeah.
watch meet up. People are gonna recognize what that watch is for sure.
Yeah. If you're a watch collector, you're definitely going to know. You may not even like it, but you're going to know. And then, um, but if you're not a watch collector, it's probably not a watch you're gonna realize, the story behind. And there's a huge, I mean, there's the story behind it. And I highly recommend anybody who is interested in the 50 Fathoms in general, just watch. There's two, I believe it's two, or it could be just one. I don't remember. Um, uh, Lectures from the Horological Society of New York that are on YouTube, and it gives you the entire history of the 50 Fathoms. And there's a and I always like to bring this up, but there's a picture of I believe it was Fichter, who's the Fichter. I don't even know if I say his name right. It's French. Who's the guy who sort of dreamt up the 50 fathoms, and it's a picture of him on a boat with the guy who designed the Submariner, but he
Nice.
didn't design the Submariner yet. And the 50 fathoms was on Fichter's wrist. I think it was Fichter, but I don't remember. So a lot of people say that he took or copied the 50 fathoms for the Submariner, and they would come out with a Submariner very shortly after. So kind of interesting when you think about it.
For sure. And Aqualung is the same company that also worked with Doxa, correct? We spoke about that while you were there.
Yep. And I believe Jacques Cousteau was the owner. So a lot of names, a lot of history, a lot of cool things about the watch that obviously, you know.
So how was your experience coming to Lucky Bazaar, meeting the whole crew,
That was
meeting
fun.
everybody?
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So I drove down. What was it on Monday afternoon? So I had a lot of stuff to do before I came down. So it was a pretty crazy day. But my son, he broke his arm and everything, and through the when he was attacked by the dog and everything. So we had to do that in the morning, and I wanted to make sure everything was okay before I came down to you guys. So I got the go ahead. Everything was great. Everything was going well. His arm is doing really well. All of his wounds are doing well. So
That's good.
the doctor sent us home. We weren't there very long. We were really, really happy. So I shot down. I picked up Danny from Danny Reuter Watches, and I shot down to Pennsylvania. And we didn't have that much time. We only had about 2 hours. We got to hang out with Roman for a little while. Hung out in his office, talked watches. This was, and he said that I could tell people, so this is good. This was his personal watch.
Yeah.
So he said he wore it for about 3 years, and he decided to, put it up on the site. And luckily, here we are. So pretty cool. I'm really excited, very, very pumped about this watch, and I'm very proud to be the owner of a vintage 50 Fathoms. But yeah, the offices are awesome. And Roman, really nice guy. Obviously talked about watches for a while. It was a lot of fun.
For sure. So now that you got the lock on, what's next on the list? The our org?
That's a good question. Next on the list for me is I definitely want to get an MB&F. I want an HM5. This is a watch that I actually talked to you about in the past. I want to get an HM5. I want to have another Vacheron in my collection. I'm not sure which Vacheron I actually want, but I would like to have another Vacheron. Maybe a dual time, but an overseas dual time, but the Series 2, not the Series 3. Although I really love the Series 3. I have a Series 3, so I'd like to get a Series 2. I don't know. There's a lot of watches. Vintage wise, I want to get a Type 20, like Roman's Type 20, his Breguet Type 20. Although I'd probably end up getting something like a Maffei Tissot or something like that, just to do something a little bit different. But yeah, I would love to get a Type 20. Any Type 20.
MB&F would be awesome. Yeah, that's for sure. For sure. So how many watches now do you have? I remember watching your state of collection, which was like what, 3 or 4 videos, I think.
Yeah,
Last week or so.
I did a bunch of videos. I have a vintage collection that I did a state of the collection for, and then I did 2 state of the collections because they ran really long, so I split it up into 2 different videos. I mean, technically, I probably have in the neighborhood of 200 watches. I think in those videos I featured about 100. So, listen, just it's an addiction, I guess, but Yeah, I have a lot of watches.
For sure, for sure. I'm the same way. Now, like we're working where I work, like I kind of feel like I don't have to buy a whole bunch because I get to try on a whole bunch. Like I'm lucky enough, like I have to pinch myself sometimes. Like which comes to the selling part is selling Grail watches. Like literally every single day, I get to handle all kind of different gold pieces. You know, RN, whatever, MBNF, what all kind of different Rolex that most people don't get to see, which is really cool.
Have you bought any watches since you started working at Luxury Bazaar?
I had bought one, but not through Luxury Bazaar. I bought a Breitling Endurance Pro. Now, I was kindly gifted by Roman and Adrian. I don't know if you saw that episode, the Tudor that I'm wearing, the Black Bay Pro,
Right.
or the Black Bay, yeah, the 58. Sorry, excuse me, not the Pro. But yeah, I was gifted that for my 1 year, which is really cool.
That's awesome.
So, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely been an experience. Like I said, sometimes I still have to pinch myself, getting to now I get to do what I love for a living, and then I get to see, meet other. I hate to use the term watch geeks, but get to see other watch geeks in person. Just back home, it was just like, I mean, it was just like most of my friends weren't into watches at all. You just like talking a foreign language then. But now I
I
get
mean,
to talk it every day.
that's the reason why I start. One of the, there's a lot of reasons why I started a YouTube channel, but one of the major reasons is because I didn't really have anybody to talk to watches about. My wife was kind of in the watch industry, and she hated talking about watches. And my friends, like, they're into watches, but they're not that deep. You know what I mean? They like watches, and they have a few watches each. A lot of my friends actually, genuinely like watches, but they're not like they can't get on a live stream and talk about watches for an hour. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
I don't think I think that takes a special, crazy person like us, but and a lot of people in the chat, but that's whatever. So, yeah, I got to meet you at Wind Up, Watch Time, because you guys didn't go to Wind Up, although
Watch time.
Average Joe, Matt,
Oh yeah, I hang out with Average Joe and Josh down here in Philly.
Josh. Yeah,
Both
you
great
guys
guys.
all. Are you guys far? Are you guys far away from each other or close
We're
by?
about 40 minutes away. I would say 30, 40 minutes. So close enough.
We're all autistic. Yeah, watch people are all off diet.
Autistic.
It could be. I mean, I think people who are watch collectors get really obsessed about the little details on things. You know what I mean? Like this is, I mean, when you really think about it, and I was sitting here last night and I was just like, like I just it's crazy. It's the little details that matter so much about a watch like this, because it's an aqua lung. It was sold through the, and no one would really even care. It's like, it's funny. It's just funny. It's people obsess over very, very little details. But yeah, no, it was great meeting Matt and Josh in New York. I mean, we've been talking, since the very beginning, almost the very beginning of my channel, almost. And it was good to meet those guys. Just ran into each other. Didn't know they were going. I think I asked you guys to go the year prior, and no one went. And I was like, all right. And then I just randomly ran into them when I was walking.
Yeah, I didn't even know you were going to be there either. Like me and Marco went up pretty much almost all weekend. I think Marco ended up going up like that Sunday too. I didn't go that Sunday, but we went like Friday, Saturday with Rome and everybody. It was cool to do. I'll probably definitely go again next year. So
I take off of work. I tell my job I'm like, I can't be here all weekend. I don't tell them why, but I just take off, and I literally take off the date because it's Red Bar Global Meetup as well, the same weekend. So the Red Bar Global Meetup starts on Wednesday, and then there's events Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and there's like a major event on Friday, and then that leads into the nighttime event at Watch Time, excuse me. And I think they have like a little event at Wind Up, but I didn't go to that on Friday. And then there's Saturday and Sunday. I went every single day. And
nice.
I don't get sick
And you
of this
said you
one.
got to meet Random Rob and a couple other people too at the event.
Not only got to meet Random Rob, I hung out with Random Rob for a few hours. We went and got a couple of beers. We walked around the city. I told him the ups and downs of living in New York City and some of the special things that I've encountered living in the city this long. And then we went to an Oris event and we had some hamburgers, had a couple of more drinks, and it was a really long day. So I just looked at him and I was like, I gotta go home. I'm so tired. Well, I just went home. But yeah.
I understand that. Speaking of, me and Josh and Matt need to come up that way sometime. You need to show us a good Brooklyn style pizza.
Guys, you got to come up here. And I mean, especially next time for wind up and watch time, if you guys are going to come up here, let's do a dinner. Let's go to a steakhouse. Let's hang out. I mean, don't eat steak. We can go someplace else. Hang out, get a couple of drinks. You know what I mean? It was completely random. I didn't know you guys were going to be here. I definitely would have loved to, sit down and have a beer, talk at least for a few minutes.
Yeah, it was a little last minute for us too.
No, I get it. I mean, it's tough. I mean, you probably, it's rough with having I mean, I know for Josh and Matt, they have kids and everything. It's believe me, I it's tough. I understand. So,
Chris, have you bought an Oak and Oscar yet? Have you?
Oak and Oscar, no.
I haven't. I've looked into them before. I believe they're based out of Chicago, right?
Yeah, I have not. I have. A while ago, I reached out to I didn't reach out, but I said in a couple of videos that if anybody wanted to loan me certain watches, and Oak and Oscar was one, and there were a few other brands. Helson was another, and I eventually got some of those in, which was really great. But those I have not. I have not gotten one of those in yet. Kids, what are those?
Yeah. Josh is on another one.
Yeah, you're on another level, buddy. can't compete.
But yeah, for sure. So yeah, it definitely was really great. Like I said, for you to come down. Like I said, Don Reuter, really nice guy. His watches are insane, especially for the amount of detail. How many hours does he put into those? Do you know?
He puts in from my conversations with him, it takes him about a week to finish one movement. Mm-hmm. And that's him working, 9 to 5, probably over 9 to 5, all week. And he's just finishing, and he does electroplating. He does all the whole thing himself. And it was really cool because Roman, shot a post up on his Instagram about about his, just saying that he's, that they're awesome watches, and that's really nice of him. I wanted to bring Danny along with me because I knew Roman would be there, and I wanted him to show Roman his watches, just because, I really respect Roman, and I've been talking about, I think from back, I think it was about 2 years ago, I got in touch with Roman over affordable watches. So we started talking about affordable watches. It's 2+ years ago. It was really early on. I had 4,000 subscribers, 5,000 subscribers, something like that. And we started talking about, affordable watches, and he sent me some watches to review, and I featured them on my channel. And I think it was Ian who was doing the shipping back then, right? Now he is.
Well, Ian was dealing with some of that, not the shipping, but he still does videography, but yeah, he was handing out, or not handing out, but helping out with the shipping and all that with the.
Because I did the videos, and then they immediately sold, and we get an email from Ian. He's like, "I need the watches back now." I'm like, all right. So it was pretty funny, but I've wanted to work with Roman for a very long time, just not work with him, just have a collaboration with him and at least meet him. So I really respect him, and I'm really happy that I was able to meet him and also bring Danny along, because he, it was really important for him, and he wanted to meet Roman as well, and he wanted to show him his watches, which is pretty cool. I mean, not going to sell Roman a watch, you know what I mean? But he's just to get his opinion, to make it, get his eyes on it. He took out a
Yeah.
loop, and he was looking at the movement, and he looked up and he's like, it's no Grubel Forsey, but
Yeah.
it's really, he said it's really nice, and that's pretty cool. So
yeah, Roman geeks out on it and stuff like the rest of us too. Still, so
yeah, really.
I'm not gonna answer that question. That's no, but yeah, that's like I said, he geeks out on the watch movies and stuff like that, like the rest of us do as well. As you saw, he was wearing the Grubel Forsey.
Well, I could see it. He couldn't get the safe open, remember? So
Yeah.
I couldn't see the Grubel Forsey. I really wanted to see it.
That's right. Yeah. He was wearing that today. He finally got it open. Yeah. But,
well, that's his personal watch. Maybe in a few years I'll buy it off of him.
There you go.
I can't. That's not going to happen. Not going to happen, but I would love to.
Yeah, average Joe comes to the office about once a month or so.
Oh yeah.
So, cause he's close.
You're very close. Lucky.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Cool.
But yeah, I figure we'll probably keep it to probably about half an hour or so. What do you think tonight?
What's that?
I figure we'll probably keep it to about half an hour or so, half an hour, 40 minutes. Don't want to keep you too long.
Yeah, sure, no problem.
Because I know you probably going to be up for work in the morning. I'm sure too. But
day job, so always looming in the background.
Were I to meet Roman, I would try to wear something he's never seen. I don't know if that's possible. He's seen a lot.
Yeah, I would imagine there's not much that he hasn't seen. Especially, I mean, he has a vault basically just filled with watches, so he could pretty much put on anything he wants at any time. So
For sure.
It was really cool because when I came in and then he walked in, we were looking at the watches and he was just like, "Did you know this was my personal watch?" And I said, "How would I know? That's awesome. That makes it a little bit more special for me, And one of the now I started following Roman probably, I don't know, he probably had around I don't even know. It was very, very low numbers. When it was just what's on my desk, and he was doing like sort of the videos where none of the sort of reality show videos that he's doing now. And I remember when he got the Type 20. So I remember he had the Type 20, but I didn't know he had this watch. And the Type 20 has always been a Grail watch as well for me. So the 50 Fathoms, the Type 20, and then as vintage watches go, I mean, there's tons of vintage watches that I love, but I think those are the two biggest Grails for me. And I definitely would love to get a Type 20 in the collection as well. And maybe I could end up buying. No, I think he already sold that, right? The Type 20, the Breguet.
Yeah, we may have another coming in. I just got offered one today, so we'll see whether.
Oh, really? A vintage
not the vintage. It's a modern Type 20.
No, the modern. Yeah, I had a modern one. I sold that. I had a modern.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. Good.
No, I was just gonna say I just kind of prefer the Breguet Type 20 over the Omega Speedy. I might be a little bit different than a lot of people on that, but I kind of prefer it over Speedy.
I mean, the histories are very different. World War II versus a moon watch, so pretty cool, But
speaking of Roman, there he is.
What's up, guys?
Hey,
what's up? We were just talking about you.
Oh yeah, I heard for the last 5 minutes. What time or so? I had to perform some fatherly duties, but I did manage. Did you guys know that a dolphin can hold his breath for 30 minutes? And there's a spider out there in the world that if you took a spider web and you wove it into a rope the size of your pinky finger, it could stop an airplane. 1,000 interesting facts about everything, brought to you by my 7-year-old, whom I read that book. I've been reading that book to her for quite some time, and I learned some things. Nothing about watches, though. I overheard you guys talking about the Type 20 versus Omega. It's a bold statement made by Chris, and I'm gonna go. Well, you're both Chris, by my Chris. Let's just differentiate you guys that way. Uh, and I gotta go with Chris on that one because I think that the heritage alone of it being a brigade, again, not that Omega is far behind, but brigade is synonymous with the godfather of all watchmaking. So for me, it's always brigade would always be sort of that higher echelon. And I hate to do this with watches, but at the end of the day, we all know that, look, there's cheaper brands, there's more expensive brands, right? And brigade is synonymous with being a lot more expensive than that of Omega. But personally, I'd go for the brigade, even the not even the vintage Type 20 you guys were talking about, but I would go with just the remake, the first Type 20. Not a fan of the 21 and the 22. I felt that the Type 20 lost its appeal when they moved into like 21 and 22, made him bigger, a little bit bulkier. I felt like the original Type 20 was very appealing, especially a stainless, that made that with stainless steel with a blue dial, high polish. I think they made it in white gold as well, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Chris, kudos on going Brigade Type 20 over Omega, yes, but I think 8 out of 10 people and whoever's listening would probably still go with the Omega because from a
We know Nick
collectability.
would.
Yeah, because from a collectability perspective, the Speedy is that one watch you got to have. So odds are 9 out of 10 people will still go with Speedy.
Thomas Burnett, appreciate the super chat. Said Chris and Chris, what would you like to see improve on watches, affordable or expensive this year? Bracelets, clasp, crowns, bezels, etc. Chris, I'll let you handle that one.
Yeah, when we're talking about affordable watches like micro brands and stuff like that, a lot of micro brands use the exact same clasp. I think they all come out of the same factory. I would love to see more on the fly micro adjusts from micro brands. I think I say this at every video that I make for a micro brand watch. Dive when I'm talking about divers here. Usually they're all the same. They're all this just sort of generic, very functional, well made. Thick metal. They're milled usually. I just like to see more micro adjusts from bracelets from micro brands. They could definitely do it. Zelos is one of the brands that do it. And there's a few others that are doing it now. But definitely, yeah.
What are your thoughts on more, if we're talking about straps instead of bracelets, what are your thoughts on, combination of? So imagine a lot of people will take a Rolex that's a bracelet model, take an Oris strap or rubber bead, whichever one, right? Use the existing hardware from the Rolex bracelet and throw in that strap. I would love to see that from not just micro brands, but all brands across, sort of that combination of material. I think, when you get into a rubber strap, a leather strap, a Velcro strap, whatever it might be, but the hardware is not your usual, hang buckle or even a deploying buckle, but something of a system, much like you take a Rolex clasp, a folding clasp, and outfit it on the rubber. I guess it's rubber B that does it, or Oris. I think they both do it. And then now you have the mechanics and you have the hardware from a bracelet, but yet you're wearing a rubber strap. So a combination of such things would be pretty cool, I think.
That would be cool. And then you get the ability to use the glide lock. If it's a Rolex, you still have the glide lock, right?
Yeah.
So micro adjust on a strap is priceless, I think, because some people, for me, when I put on a strap, sometimes the holes aren't in the you know what I mean. Like I need a hole like 2 millimeters over a little bit, and I have a weird wrist. I have like a big knuckle in my wrist, so it's like I never get a perfect fit with certain straps. Certain straps I get a good, it's not that bad, but you buy a watch and it's not comfortable because of the strap, kind of sucks, and you have to change the strap or having a little bit of micro adjust. And there's a few micro brands have done that though. There's a brand called Formex, which they created their own little micro adjust. They made a little micro adjust mechanism within the actual deploying clasp. It's a very lightweight. It's made out of resin. It's pretty cool.
when you bring up straps and a hole not lining up perfectly, it's a pretty common thing because like you have a standard distance between every hole in a strap, more or less, right? I don't know if anybody's different from any other, but for the more or less, it's the same distance from hole to hole. And oftentimes, especially guys with smaller wrists or much larger wrists, you end up poking extra holes in the straps or punching out extra holes, especially if it's a rubber strap. We had a $700,000 watch that came in yesterday, and the guy literally punched an extra hole in the rubber strap of that AP because he had a small wrist. And I'm just like, you really $700,000 watch? You couldn't order an extra strap? I guess you couldn't, because nowadays, you got to go through like a whole interview process to buy a strap from AP or Richard Mille nowadays. It's like a whole to do, apparently. But I always think of my military belt. So in the military, you get issued a military belt that you wear with your BDUs, your regular uniform, not your dress, or even your dress. And the way the buckle works, and I don't know what the name of it is, but imagine a solid buckle, and there's that pin system that goes through it that kind of slides back and forth. It allows you to wear a belt without any holes. I think that if someone came up with something similar, because for a watch strap, you can do away with so many problems.
Right.
It might prove difficult in execution on thicker rubber and leather straps, but certainly on Velcro straps or on NATO type straps, that type of adjustment system could certainly work. And I wish there's got to be a name for that type of belt buckle, but it basically just glides on, and then you use the little pin, slide it over, and it locks it in place.
I do know one of my favorite combos I've seen, believe it or not, is actually the two-tone bluesy on the Everest strap, the blue Everest strap. I don't know if you've seen that or not, Roman.
Yeah, I mean, again, whether it's Everest or Rubber Bee or any of these other companies that sort of make it. There's a ton of companies that came out there, and really a few became households names. I'm usually not a fan of putting a aftermarket anything on a watch, which includes the straps. But there are some combos out there that just like take a Polar Dial Explorer and put it on a white rubber B strap. That's just becomes an amazing watch, right? There's a couple of a bluesy on a blue strap. There's a couple of pieces out there that when before AP came out with the camos, if you remember the camo offshores, Oris, I think it was, came out with a multitude of these uh, camo straps, red and green, blue, you name it. Of course, a year later, I think AP came out with their camo offshores, and they started doing the same exact straps. People are saying, well, did they really copy off of Rubber B? Honestly, they probably noticed it, and they said, well, wait a minute, why are we going to let them sell that strap for $150 when we can sell ours for $550? You know?
Panerai did the same thing. They came out with. I remember I used to really love Panerai. I used to be really into Panerai.
Are you one of the original Panaristi? Hold on.
I was very early. I was a very early adopter of the Panerai.
Your wife used to work for him, right?
What's that?
My wife used to work for him, right?
Yeah, my wife worked for Panerai for 18 years. She no longer works for Panerai. She works for Bacardi now. So completely different industry. Things are completely different.
You went from being a watchaholic to an alcoholic.
Alcoholic, that's right.
Okay, good.
She gets a stipend of money every month to spend on alcohol.
Don't get high on your own supply. That doesn't apply to Bacardi, apparently.
It's ridiculous. And for like Christmas, they send her alcohol. It's like it's all about alcohol. That's all they do there. It's pretty cool. I got to tell you, it's not that bad. But Panerai did that too, because Panerai saw like there was like a guy named that made like combat straps. I think it's Aaron Bespoke or something like that. He was making like these weird straps for Panerais and stuff like that. And Panerai caught onto it, and then they started coming out with all different colors and Velcro straps and all different color rubber straps that you can get from them. And they were charging $200 for them or whatever the hell. I still like Panerai. Actually,
I do too. I am actually. I guess I can say my feelings are hurt over Panerai overall. Because it came out really strong out of the gate around the time that I just got into the industry. Panerais were a humongous craze, but as the years go by and you keep spitting out, limited editions over and over and over, it's more of the same, more of the same. Again, Richmond Group, right? That's when it starts to lose its appeal. But I remember we did an unboxing. We got in Panerai 217, the lefty. That was like after I guess the 203, the Angelus. I think that was like the Grail to have a
Mhm.
PM 217. Like if you had one of those, you were like, my God, like every Panaristi on Panaristi board and everywhere else was just like, oh my God, I can't believe you got the 217. It actually meant something. My favorite Panerai is actually the Pan 196, the Daylight. And for me, was it the 186 was 186 was the black and 188 was the white. I actually like the white one, the 188. And when you put that watch on, it's like you wore Sylvester Stallone, like it just may give you that feeling. And now it's like after 5, 6, 7 years have gone by and they ramped up production, and they ramped up production in a weird way. They just started making more models that seemingly look the same and then reproducing. We went from the PAM 90 Power Reserve to, I don't know, the next model was 200 something, and then there's like 400 something, and then you had the PAM 88, which was a GMT. Those were the OGs, the PAM 90, Power Reserve, the 88 GMT, the 111 Marina. Those were the pieces that they were just so different. They got in at the right time when the size craze happened. People wanted bigger and better watches when offshores finally started to get love. And Richmond Group just ruined it. It's just they just produced too much. If that's a brand that's stuck to, you know, 4, 5,000 piece production in the likes of, let's say, Longa, that would have been perfectly fine, but they just made too many.
Yeah, they tried to overscale and try to. I mean, when they came out with the Due, that was where I was kind of like, and I know a lot of people when they first announced it, and they were like, oh, it's a 30-meter water resistance, and they left the crown guard on there, which it's their signature look. The one thing about a Panerai that I always loved, and it kind of when you walk into a room and there's a bunch of people wearing watches, you're going to see the guy who's wearing a Panerai. You're going to know he's wearing a Panerai because of the crown guard, the shape of the case, the cushion case. It's a Panerai. You know what I mean? And if it's not a Panerai, it's probably an homage to a Panerai. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what I always liked about the brand. And then they, never mind all the problems that they had with movements and saying that they're in house when they're not really in house. I actually don't care about all that. What I care about is just, if you're going to make dive watches and you're going to make them look like dive watches, I want them to be dive watches. You know what I mean? That was my biggest problem with them. Still, I still love Panerai. I have 3 Panerai. Will I ever sell them? I don't know, but I had a lot more at one point. And I've been thinning the herd.
I mean, just to put things in perspective, how far they have fallen. If you remember when the PM 203 came out, which was a super allocated piece, went to diehard Panerai collectors and buyers from the boutiques, that watch went up to upwards of $250,000, right? And I know people that paid over 200,000 for a PM 203. I don't remember exactly how many they made, but I know people that have paid over 200,000 for that watch. That was the Panerai to have, right? Take aside the Prevendome stuff, take aside the vintage stuff. Modern Panerai PAM 203 was the holy grail. It was the Sky Moon Tourbillon for Panerai. And about 6 months ago, Chris, I think we had a PAM 203 in complete box
Mhm.
papers. Of course, the box went to shit because a little dampness and they start to get sticky and all the black stuff peels off, but that's a different story. We ended up selling that watch just shy of $60,000. And when I got that watch in and we bought it, and I'm like, I'm gonna make a home run on this. There's gonna be a diehard Panarisi that's gonna pay me all the money for this watch. A, it wasn't easy to sell, and B, I think total margin we ended up making on the watch was 12% maybe, and it wasn't an easy sell. And that's what told me like, yeah, we have a long road to climb back. But I will defend them and say that I think that the new Carbotech lineup, I think is pretty sick. Every the one with the blue dial, the blue Carbotech. I think they have a green one. They have this one with a slate dial. I've handled a couple. It brings me back to the old rugged Panerai look and feel, but different use of materials. I think there's still. I think we'll see another Panerai time. How about that? If they cut down production, some of the same shit over and over, and continue coming out with this innovative stuff, the plain Marina, the green one, I don't. The PAM reference numbers are now in 4 digits. I only go up to 2, maybe 3, but but there's a couple of really nice things that they've made. They just need to revamp a little bit. Do this. Richmond, if Richmond does the same thing they did with Panerai with Longa, cut down production by more than half, I think they'll be fine. What are your thoughts? Do you like the Carbitex, Chris?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Or which Chris? Me or the
Well,
Watch
either
Chris?
one of you. Well, we got to figure this out. All right, so Chris, you're on the left of my screen, so you're gonna be Chris 1. Chris, you're gonna be Chris 2.
I have a Carbotech. I have I don't remember the number. It's a 663. It has like the warm patina with the rose gold indices.
You
Um,
don't ask me. Like I said, after the 3-digit Panerai, I'm lost. Like I stopped because before there's used to be 12 models, and
yeah.
then when they became 1,200 models, it becomes an issue.
I also remember that like the Bronzo. I really wanted a Bronzo because they were the first company to come out with a bronze watch. I was so psyched about that. And then one day my wife comes home and she's just like, they're coming out with more Bronzos. And I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, we're coming out with more Bronzos. I go, that's going to piss off a lot of people who have and she showed me pictures of them and I was just like, this is ridiculous. They're exactly just
Wait,
they should
the
have just
blue
left
one,
well
the
enough
blue
alone.
Bronzo was the blue Bronzo, the second Bronzo they came out with.
I think it was the second one.
Yeah,
The
right.
first Bronzo had I think it was like a tobacco dial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Oh, by the way, Roman, Design Atelier, he's the guy that did the posters for you, the big heads, the watch heads.
Oh, what's up? What's
That's
up? How
Jason.
are you? You know me. I suck with names, Chris. Whether it's YouTube handles or Instagram names or names in
Yeah,
general,
that's
I'm
Jason.
I'm actually
He did
having
the
it. Well, thank you again because that stuff. I mean, Marcus, my son, was beside himself when I sent that down to his store. He loved it. It's absolutely amazing stuff. I think it's super creative, and I think it's amazing.
very cool. I've seen Design Altier. You post those on Instagram all the time with all the
He does
different
the
watch
watch
heads.
head. He
Yeah,
does the
yeah,
watch
watch heads.
heads.
Yep, yep.
It's funny
Really,
because he made a picture of me and my son together. My son holding a sneaker, me holding a watch, and I was holding the Marcus watch in that picture, and he got it down to like the limited edition number and everything.
oh wow.
And you look at this picture and you can't help it. There's no face. It's a watch face, i.e., watch heads. But you look at it and at a glance, like I recognize me and my son. It's just, I mean, it takes an artist's eye to be able to do that. I'm working on a little art project myself, guys. I don't know if you can see that. Do you know what this is? So that's a canvas that's about a little more than 10 feet across and about 7 feet high. And if I can zoom in, you can see there's a watches.
That's
It's
cool.
been about 4 months of cutting them out. So I'm
I was
making a
gonna say,
collage. So this thing, if you know the uh my background in my office, people tend to recognize it. It says branded status, those two pictures. The ones we took a picture in front of when you were there, Chris.
yeah.
And I made those with my kids. They're inspired by an artist named Peter Tooney. A lot of people mistake those pictures for Peter Tooney's pictures because we went down to Wynwood in Miami and we saw his stuff and I immediately fell in love with it. It's so simple. It's a collage behind of something, and then there's a meaningful saying, right? Either a catchy phrase or something, a play on words. In my office, branded is covered with a bunch of cutouts of brands, and status is cut out with a bunch of famous people. And Peter Tooney does this. Of course, if those two were Peter Tooney's, that'd probably be about $200,000. And my two probably cost me whatever, two canvases from Michaels at a little bit of time, maybe $200. So and some old magazines. So I came up with a new one, and I decided to make one all out of watches because I happen to have 100 auction catalogs. And this one is going to say time equals money question mark, right? And it's a play on words, obviously, for watches, and also that we know that the most precious asset we have is time, and should be good. It should take me probably another 4 months to I probably have cut out over 2,000 watches so far, and it's
And
about halfway done.
you're cutting them out yourself, or you're having your kids do
I
it for
love
you?
doing this. Like we'll get together in like room I'm sitting in is my room. This is like my library. Well, there is a fireplace behind there somewhere, but this is kind of like my room. It's a little bit masculine. I like to grab a glass of whiskey, sit down, talk to friends, but then the family will come, the girls will come, and we'll sit and we'll sit there, cut them out collectively, and glue them on collectively. So it's like a family project.
Cool.
Good way to spend
You gotta
time.
post that up in the office or keep it for your house.
I don't know. This thing is freaking huge. Like, I don't know how to even try. I made the canvas too because you can't buy a canvas this big. So I just went to Home Depot, got a little bit of lumber and slapped something together using really, it's not even canvas, it's project boards, like the kind that kids take to school, the ones that fold in three. And I just used a bunch of them, put them together on the canvas and stapled them on. But we'll see. This is still going to take a while. I want to ask Chris too a question.
Wait,
Um,
I'm Chris too.
yes, you're well because the only way I can do this is because you guys in order 1, 2. So there you go.
Number one and
So
number two.
expectations 2023 in terms of new models, and you pick a brand, 2 brands, it's up to you. Knowing that the market has now dipped, knowing that every single hype model out there, from starting Nautilus, Aquanaut, Royal Oaks, Daytonas, Steel Rolex, as a company, considering the fact that their production plans probably already were set in place before the dip happened in the market 6 months ago or so. If you let's not call it a prediction. If you are Audemars Piguet, let's start there, and you know that the hype has sort of fallen again to an extent. A lot of the stuff is still trading at 2x. What do you do as a company?
So, I mean, I agree with you that the hype has not fallen, and I think that it depends on where the market's going. So in general, not the watch market. I think the where finances are going and how people are sort of facing inflation and everything that's going on in the markets. But watches, I feel, have become a little bit. So when I first started collecting watches, people were really interested in watches, but there weren't YouTube channels about it. There weren't people talking about it. There weren't things like meetups, like like we were talking about clubs the other day. Red Bar and all these other national clubs that have just come up. I really don't think that prices are going to fall all that much because, or demand prices can fall, and I think they'll fall a little bit, but I think demand for a while is going to be there because there are new collectors every day. It's kind of funny because I work, I work in a bank, and I'll have like a junior associate join the team, and they won't be into watches at all. They start talking to me. I start talking to them. I tell them about watches. They learn about. By the time they are moving on to the next position, they are into watches and they want to buy their first watch. And it's X, Y, and Z, and they have it in their head. And it may not even be a watch that I've ever shown them, or it could be a watch that I'm kind of enthusiastic about. So if I'm AP, if I'm Rolex, well, Rolex, forget about it. If I'm AP, I would say I wouldn't change my strategy very much. Cutting production is probably not a bad idea, but not by very much. I really think that they're going to continue to have new people coming to the sport of collecting. And I mean, you're a great example. I mean, your channel, you started your YouTube channel, years ago, and you've gotten so much momentum behind you. And there's other YouTube channels with the same momentum behind them, and people are joining and just interested in watches. There's a lot of people out there becoming interested in watch. It can't be all the people that were existing that were interested in watches. These are new people joining and becoming interested in watches, and they're going to aspire to own an AP or a Rolex eventually. If they don't have the money now, one day they will. When I first started collecting, I was a chef. I had a G-Shock. I had a bunch of Seikos. I was really into Seiko. I didn't have the money to buy a watch, but then, as I got more into it, learned more about the watches, I started out low, and now, I have a 50 fathoms right here, which is,
Yeah.
I mean, like that's
I
my
will. I'll give you.
my
I'll give
grail.
you. I'll give you a couple of hot takes, right? So based on what you said, I'll add on to what you said. I 100% agree with you that, thanks to a YouTube space and not just my channel, but everybody's channel that's out there. You have some, well, obviously you have the OG, you have the Talking Hands Andrew, right? He just started his own YouTube channel In fact, he reached out, and I'm hoping to do a collab. He reached out to me. He's like, "Hey, do you want to do a collab?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're like a legend. Like you're like the guy. Like, you know what I mean? I would, you tell me when and where, I'm there. Like, and um now you have guys like Nico that broke outside of our watch world. He doesn't just appeal to watch people; he appeals to everyone. First YouTube channel to hit 1 million, right? He'll hit 2 million pretty soon as well. Uh, and we are creating collectors every single day. Your channel included, Chris, and yours, Chris. Every single time we touch someone out there by doing a live like this or some sort of entertaining content or a watch review, we do tend to create watch collectors or aspiring watch collectors. One thing I will add to what you said is another factor is for 20 years, well, a little less, I've been preaching that watches are not an investment. They're an expensive toy. Buy what you like. I still say buy what you like. I still say that these things are expensive toys. But I've also have come to a realization that when you get into a market where you have guys like JP Morgans and the Bloombergs and the Wall Street Journals that are starting to publish articles that are watch indexes, that are watch markets, statements such as, "Oh, well, the Rolex index outperformed the S&P by X," or the Rolex index outperformed Nasdaq by Y. People, as much as we can talk about it, the changes in pricing, right? People still, they'll take it with a grain of salt. But when you got the big boys out there talking about it, a lot of people are still saying, well, wait a minute, perhaps this isn't a bad place to park money, especially because I get to wear them, enjoy them, and show them off, right? So it's one of those things where that's another addition to that. Uh, the economical situation in our country and worldwide, and geopolitical and all those other things, obviously they're going to have an effect. But usually what those things tend to do, and I'm speaking from experience post the '08 crisis, is people, um, we like to call it crocodile hands, right? If you notice, a crocodile's his first, or a T-Rex disease, we call it. A T-Rex had two short little arms, right? So if you can imagine, the T-Rex had pockets, big pockets, but short hands, and don't want to quite reach into that pocket, right? So you find that situation, people tend to lose the mood to buy, but they quickly go back to the old habits die hard, as they say, and they quickly tend to go back. It took 4 months for the watch market to recover post the '08 crisis. That was an actual crisis, not a recession. So yeah, I think I do feel that not necessarily cutting production from AP. Look at what happened to the anniversary pieces from AP, the 50th anniversary. They're no more. They're done, right? They're all sold out. The biggest issue, though, is that they took all of them made and then dumped it out at the market at the same time. So, you had people asking. I remember the first green steel Chrono, some idiot put it up on Chrono 24 for $450,000. I'm like, dude, are you insane? Like, what are you doing? Like, it's just stupid, right? But, and the first few sold for $250,000, right? And then they quickly, dropped 4 times. That's because they released all of them at the same time. I think it's the release schedule that a lot of these brands that need to work on. You have a year, right? If you have a year and what's APs at 50,000 pieces a year approximately. So put out 5,000 pieces a month. Put out, don't dump 30,000 pieces at the same time. What do you expect is going to happen?
Yeah.
So I think it's the timing of the releases that I think is extremely important. And guess what? A lot of people slept on the 50th anniversary. Mark my words, watch what's going to happen a year from now with every 50th anniversary piece is going to go back up, because people are going to realize, wait a minute, I missed it. Look, when you have the 25th anniversary pieces, we had the tourbillons, we had it in platinum, skeleton, we had it in every variation. We have one left, I think, in steel now. Last auction results, they fetched $365,000, which is probably 3x its original MSRP. And people will realize. Then the 40th anniversary, same thing, right? They all trade at a ridiculous number, but people slept on the 50th anniversary because they got turned off right away because so many came out on the market, and
You think
availability
the
was there.
15202 is going to be one of the big ones?
No, but the
The
problem
50?
with 5202 has been produced for how many years now? 14 years. I mean, it's been quite a while since there's a lot of them out there. I love the 15202. Uh, you know, I would be inclined to either park the very, very last one or the very, very first one. Those tend to be the more collectible ones, less produced that year, et cetera, et cetera. And hey, listen, the Jaeger, the 920 movement, I mean, it's gone. That's it. It's done. So that's certainly a collectible, but there's a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
50th anniversary, a year production. How many they're going to make? And a lot of those pieces are actually limited.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess what you're saying is rather than dumping everything on the market, let it release it slower, or
Yeah.
or maybe not limit, but try and create a little bit more of a drip, I guess is what you're saying.
It's fun. It's funny. AP theoretically could figure out the percentage of watches that they sell to their clients, they get resold immediately. It's not hard, right? How hard is it to figure out how many pieces are out in the market? Go to Chrono, go to eBay, go to, I don't know, 10 major websites and see what's out there actually for sale, right? And you can, again, it's not going to be exact science, but let's say out of they can probably easily figure out that out of 100 watches, anywhere from 30 to 40 or maybe 60 go out into the secondary market right away, right? And that should tell them, hey, here's the rate I'm going to be releasing this piece at. Because as much as I love the hype that's going on in the market, and a lot of people say, oh, you guys are loving it, you're making so much money over the last 2 years because prices kept on climbing. People don't realize that in any market, be it watch market, car market, or whatever else, you actually make less margin when the market is on its way up. You make more margin when the margin when the market is on its way down, because the money's in the buy, it's not in the sell, right?
Mm.
And if I prefer a normalized market where you have 5 to 10% of watches that are out there that is just killer watches, likes of a Daytona and certain Nautiluses, right, that trade over list. I prefer a market where I could call up an AD and pick up a watch at 10 over cost, pretty much any watch, right? And those days are unfortunately gone. I don't think we'll see them again.
No, I mean, even affordable watches. What happened last year with the Moon Swatch? I was
that was ridiculous.
I listen. I fed the hype because I went to Grand Central Station. I waited in line. There was about, I think I counted around 500 people in line, something like that. There were fights in the line. There was chaos, and I mean chaos. I got like a bagel with some lox, and I sat and I was waiting. And I had coffee, and a couple of my friends came. We were all sitting there. Some guy comes by, and he's just like, "We're only getting 80 watches." I was like, 80 watches? There was 500 people in the line, and he walked down the whole line. He was just telling people, "We got 80 watches. We got 80 watches." No one wanted to leave. It was insanity. It was insanity. It was insanity. And then fights because of that. Fist fights started happening. There was cops, and it was just chaos. And then the weeks following, I tried to get one by waiting online in front of the Fifth Avenue store and a few other stores. And eventually I got one by waiting in front of the Fifth Avenue store when it opened, a few hours before it opened, and I went into work late that day. But it was chaos. Couldn't even get it. And
Well, let me ask you this, Chris. 500 people in line. Out of the 500 people, assume all 500 got watches. Out of those 500 people, how many of those do you think would resell the watch, and how many of those would you keep it?
400.
That,
Absolutely, 400 of them would way
and
more than the majority. Yeah,
and
absolutely.
that's a problem. And that's one of the things that makes me happy about the market taking a dip, about the market stabilizing for the craze to be over. I want this to be a buyer's market. Buying a watch should be an experience, not a FOMO thing, right? You have guys out there, and I say to my client's face, say, look, guys, you're in the buyer's market. You no longer have to look over your shoulder at the 500 people in line behind you that are willing to buy this product. Pick and choose, take your time, go back to the basics, look at the complications, look at what you're getting, look at the history. Don't buy a watch just because you know it resells for double its price. Now, you no longer sort of have to do that. You're now at a point where you can actually take your time. Again, with most stuff, not all stuff. I get it. There's also going to be those outliers that, you have to hurry up and grab it before the next guy does. But for the most part, it's coming down to a fact that now you can, at the very least, have the ability to stop, think for a minute. Hey, is this a watch I'm buying because it's a hype piece, or is this a watch I'm buying because I really want this watch, right? And at the same token, a lot of the quote unquote retail flippers, as we like to call them, right? Guys that are there simply for one reason only, is to buy that swatch and resell it. Those guys are now gone because look at the Rolex lineup. 6 to 9 months ago, you can walk into a Rolex boutique and buy literally any Rolex, and it would resell at a profit. Maybe not the 28 millimeter ladies two-tone Datejust. That's probably the only exception, right? But every gold piece, gold sky dwellers, you could buy today. There's no more margin. You know, clients call me every day. Hey, I was offered a gold sky dweller. Can I make some money? No, you can't. It's very, very tight because after you pay taxes and everything else, the margins becomes very tight to where guys like us can't offer you a profit anymore. And 9 out of 10 of those flippers, who do they go to? They went to guys like us to resell these watches. They don't have a capability to put it online and marketing and sell it and so on and so forth. They took a quick profit and walked away. And I'm hoping that that margin, as you said, which was 1 to 5, basically, or 1 to 4, I'm hoping that that margin will now decrease tremendously and collectors go back to realization that, hey, this isn't about the money. This isn't about the dollar amount or what I can make on it. Because a lot of those guys didn't resell them, but in the back of their head, they say, oh, wow, I'm up 200% on my watch, right? Which is realistically, I would tell them all the same thing. You're not. What do you mean? I bought this watch for 50. It's worth 150. I'm like, it's going to be worth 150 when you sell it and get a check for 150. You know, a lot of guys, there were some smart collectors, you know what they did? And I advise a lot of my collectors to do the same thing. There were certain watches that just got to such a price level that it just, you know, you look back at it and like, why is a 15202 blue dial $140,000, right? And I would tell guys, collectors, say, look, if you manage to get a piece at retail, okay, let's say it costs you 40 grand and you can sell it for 140, I know you don't need the money, but take that watch, trade it at that crazy value, and put yourself into something that's complicated, that has value in terms of horology. You know how many guys traded in hype Royal Oaks and Nautiluses for things like platinum AP tourbillons, concepts. One guy traded a hype piece towards a Schumacher lap timer, arguably one of the best complicated chronographs out there, right? So a lot of guys took advantage of those, but a lot of guys also wanted the flex of, I have on a $250,000 watch that I only paid 70 grand for, like a 15202 BC, right, from AP. And, you know, whatever floats everybody's boat. But at the end of the day, none of those guys are at a loss. They just lost their paper profits.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's, and like, I mean, that carries over into affordable watches as well. I mean, not as much, obviously, but those people who are buying, you know, the hype watches from, even there's affordable hype watches, you know, but the best example of that from last year is definitely the Moonswatch we were talking about before. People were selling them they were putting them up for 5 grand right after. Now, if you go on eBay, because eBay is the biggest place where you can buy these watches, if you were holding on to them, you're not making any money on them now. They're garbage. Like, they're not garbage, but I mean, they're not worth the money that you paid for them. Basically, you could get them at retail and less. So
I actually, when they first came out, look at, because I'm a watch collector by heart, and I don't discriminate against watches. I don't care if the watch is $300. If I like it, I like it. Or 300,000. It's irrelevant, right? You get what you get. If I like something, I'll buy because I like it. And I really, really liked that entire release. You know what actually turned me off is exactly what you just said. That whole hype about them selling for a ridiculous amount of money. And I know this is a watch that's going to be mass produced for the next 600 years, right? And I'm just like, they're not limited. It's only, but still a part of me wants to have, what is it, a set of 5 or 6? How many is it different? I think it's 5.
I think it's
5.
12.
I think
Oh, it's 12
yeah,
now?
12, I believe.
Like,
There's
but a
like
part of
they
me,
made a box. There was people trying to buy the box and stuff.
well, that's what I want. Like, part of me
Yeah,
wants to have all of them in that box on
yeah.
display. If you remember, there was a set of moon watches from Omega. It was made, I'm gonna say, whew, probably mid 2000s. It was, I know it was before '08. There was a $200,000 set of Omega watches, all the moon watches that were in one box. Somebody offered offered that set to me at a trade show. I remember this guy named Ed Ticelli. He offered it to me, I think, for $80,000. I'm like, dude, you're smoking crack. I'm not paying 80 grand for all of these Omegas. In retrospect, I should have bought him because that's like a pretty kick-ass set to have. And again, I'm telling you right now, till this day, I think at some point I'm gonna go out and get every one of those moon watches. I'm gonna walk into
I
Swatch. I'm gonna buy them all and try to find the box.
I think Luke actually has almost all of them, if not all of them now.
Yeah, they're cool watches. They look cool. Listen, people downplay Swatch watch. If it wasn't for Swatch watch, I think the Swiss watch industry would have been dead today, right? They're the ones that saved this, theoretically saved brands like all the brands that are part of the Swatch group, pretty much, that were saved by the Swatch watch during the quartz crisis. CQ from Watchbox did a great video on the history of how, the Swiss watch industry was basically saved by this cheap plastic watch. You know what I mean? Because I forget the guy's name at the time. Like I told you, I'm terrible with names, but the CEO at the time, he basically produced this cheap plastic watch that went bonkers. Everybody was buying it. But rather than taking the profits, he was taking all those monies and he was keeping all the brands afloat. So Swatch Watch in itself is a big deal. It's a big deal brand. You know what I mean? But a lot of people tend to downplay because why? Oh, because you could buy one for $50 or $100, whatever they are. Right?
I actually heard that was one of the
Like,
reasons why that Omega sort of lent their name to Swatch to sort of repay them for saving them.
Yeah. I mean,
Pretty
like
cool.
I said, I think that uh, owning that set of moon watches is still a cool thing. Now that all the craziness has died down and people are not throwing fists in line, I certainly can see myself, but I would want that box. I would want that display box.
A
let's
lot of
go
people are
tell
going, can I buy that
Bobby
box?
thanks, by the way. Just gonna tell Bobby thanks for super chat. Appreciate it, bud. But sorry, Chris, go ahead.
Oh, Bobby Legs, what's up, man? How's
He
it
just
going?
hit 12,000 subscribers, I think.
Yeah.
Bobby Legs did. So he had a big moment for his channel there too.
So
But
for all the YouTubers that are on here, I see quite a few. Like you guys keep switching the comments over and stuff. I see quite a few. I never mind sharing trade secrets or whatever you want to call them. But I think, and we talked about this, Chris, briefly when you were in my office. I think what does well for us as of late, because YouTube wants to push the short content, they're realizing how successful TikTok has become and is becoming a monster. They're the ones that, invented that whole scroll, don't stop, and don't sleep for 48 hours thing, right? And short content has been working pretty well for us, uh, specifically shorts. We saw a huge surge in subscribers when we started pushing more short content. Before it used to be like, oh, here's a cool short video. Let me just throw it up there. Here's a short, right? But as of late, we've been consistently putting up at least a short a day, both on my channel and the Luxury Bazaar channel. And, 1 out of 10 or 20 of them tends to go viral, right? It's just there's no rhyme or reason to them. Sometimes you create a kick-ass piece of content, you think it'll get all the views in the world, and it doesn't, and then vice versa. And short content is the one thing that's been working for us and working pretty well. And in reality, the only thing we're doing is, yes, there's some short content that we create, but for the most part, we take content we've created in the past and we cut it up. We take the best moments and we cut it into shorts, and they tend to work, especially when they have this. They look like TikTok videos with the subtitles and all that stuff. And there's a software that does that anyway. So
I literally, after our conversation, I went home and I made my first short in that style. Basically, I did like, the top 20 watches of 2022. I
right.
did a video just a few weeks ago. I took that video, I chopped it up, I chose 5 watches from that video, and I did a short and I threw that up. I'm going to be doing that more often. You're absolutely right. It's just,
Some
editing. It's just a pain in the
some
ass.
sometimes it's tough when you find yourself forced into something. The best example would be when Instagram started doing stories, right? I think it was when Facebook wanted to buy Snapchat, I think, right? They're the ones that came out with stories first, and Snapchat turned them down, which I think was a mistake. And so they said, oh, okay, hold my beer, and they made stories on Instagram. And if you remember, right now, if you look at Instagram, what are you looking at? When you go on your IG, you're just looking through stories. Very rarely do you start looking at the feed, right? Until you
I
click
get
a certain,
tracked, and I'm
and that we were forced to do that. We were forced to switch over to story mode versus like I loved Instagram when it was, you make a post, here's a picture. Before we even had videos, it was just pictures, right? Before they went to even short videos. I didn't mind the short videos, right? I think they gave you 30 seconds initially, but then we were all pretty much forced into creating content for stories, right? And I think YouTube is doing more of the same. They're sort of forcing you, not, hey, you have to do this or else, but you start to realize that, hey, this is what I have to do in order to continue staying successful or relevant on YouTube. I have to create short content. And which, in a nutshell, I don't mind, but sometimes it's like I look at a short and I'm like, where's the entertainment value in that? What am I putting out there? Whenever we put out a video, I always think about my subscribers and potential new subscribers. What's the value that we're bringing, right? And sometimes these shorts, it's tough to bring a value to someone in a 60-second clip.
But I completely agree. And I found, and if I, and it, when you go on Instagram, I feel like I'll start looking at a post. I'll go through my feed for a few seconds, and then all of a sudden I'll see a video. I click on the video, and then all of a sudden I'm stuck in this reel sort of, and I'm just constantly flipping up, and then I'm watching like a donkey fall over a gate, and then it lands on its back, and I'm laughing my ass off, and then I'm scrolling more, and it never stops. It's like it's addicting.
I finally broke down and got a TikTok today. I told Roman.
Oh, hail, Chris. It's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. I I'll I think TikTok is the most dangerous social media platform for kids. So my household, uh, my teenage daughter is allowed to have one social media, and that's Instagram. She's not allowed to have TikTok or anything else, and only that was allowed as of recent. My kids in general, no electronics, no iPads. If my kids want to stay busy, they have crayons and Legos. That's been a rule forever in my household, thanks to my wife. Because it's a lot easier to shut up a kid by shoving a phone in his place. We were at a friend's get together. It was a pool party, typical Saturday. Me and 45 of my closest friends and 50 of their kids.
Hmm.
And I walked from the pool into the house to use the restroom. And I saw a kid sitting inside while all the kids are outside on an iPad. I figured whatever, he's watching a cartoon, something, whatever. Kid might have been 9 years old. I walked out a couple hours and a few shots of tequila later. I'm back in the house. I got to use the bathroom again. And I see the kid still sitting in the same place, like at least 3 hours later. And then I noticed him doing this. So I looked, see what he's doing. He was on TikTok. When you get into that whole scroll thing, it's a very, very dangerous thing. And it sucks. And I say this openly, although as a business, we use social media to our advantage. We are on TikTok. We are on every platform that we need to be on. But I think for kids, knowing what I know and what can be done within the realm of social media, regardless of platform, to suck people in, basically, right? Because look, at the end of the day, the more eyes we have, the more people that are listening, the more we have a chance to potentially sell a product that we're selling, right? It's not a secret. It's still all part of marketing. But for kids, I highly, highly recommend that you don't let them touch TikTok at all. But the problem is all the other platforms are kind of going that style, YouTube included.
Yeah. It could be dangerous too, because you don't know what the hell they're watching. And even myself, like I'll be scrolling through, and then all of a sudden I'll be seeing something that, is definitely inappropriate for a kid to be watching. And 90% of it is kind of inappropriate for children to be watching.
I think
it's one of the reasons why I like it so much. But
I think YouTube does a great job. I think since I don't know when the YouTube Kids product was launched, but YouTube does a tremendous job to protect our kids in regards. So when we do let my little one watch TV, as we call it, she turns on YouTube Kids, and nothing slips through those cracks. When I tell you nothing, to an extent that these guys, it's like it feels like there's 1,000 eyes watching every piece of content that gets put in front of kids.
Yeah.
And so I know that, but TikTok and all these other guys, you can't control what the hell the kids are watching.
When you upload to YouTube, there's a thing if it's made for kids or not made for kids.
Yeah.
So, and then YouTube has an algorithm that if you produce videos that you constantly say are not made for kids, and that it has to do with advertising as well, because they can't advertise towards kids certain things and whatnot. So they're actually pretty strict about it, which is good, which is very good. And I let my kids watch. I mean, my kids are obsessed with Mr. Beast, so I've
Yeah, me and your kids both. I mean, he is, as far as
He's a beast
creators,
when it comes to YouTube.
he's a beast when it comes to creating content. I mean, he's got YouTube down to a science, and I've taken personally a lot of pointers from his videos, the style of cutting. I mean, look, a successful YouTube video, and we talked about this when you were in my office. Successful YouTube video starts from the title, has to be a catchy title. It starts from the cover photo, and then it's the hook, right? Can you hook your audience within the first 10 seconds? Mr. Beast does it within the first 6 seconds.
Yep.
Imagine that's tough to do. And when you watch a Mr. Beast video, you're like literally on your toes the entire video, the entire 10, 12 minutes of this video. And the amount of content he's able to pack into that short video. Who's really good about that is Nico. He's the one that gave me advice. He was in my office last, I don't know, a couple of years ago, and he literally sat with my videographers on the Vimeo review panel of the video we were about to put out, and he basically told us to cut out 60% of the video. I'm like, what do you mean? That's like a good part. He's like, yeah, but it's not interesting. Cut it out. I'm like, and then what? He literally wanted to cut out 70% of the video, but he was right. If you look at his videos, they're very fast paced. And if you watch him, you don't hear him take a breath. He's like, the minute you go, cut it out. You know what a video timeline looks like. His video timelines, they're literally a bunch of chops.
right.
And I'm just like, yeah, I don't know. That's a little tough, but that's Mr. Beast, and he's perfected that. Not to mention, I mean, what is it? The Squid Games, I think, in one day got more views than the actual shows on Netflix or something.
Well, it's 100 and what is it? 125 million followers or something.
Yeah, he beat. Was it?
Like
Was
that.
it PewDiePie was number one, and then he beat him, right?
Mhm.
That's
I,
insane.
I always said, like, how is it that the gamers on YouTube, the gamers are probably some of the most successful YouTubers on YouTube, and I'm sitting there thinking, how is it somebody's going to sit there and watch somebody play a video game for hours? Walk into my son's room, what is he doing? He's watching some gamer. What do? I sit
Mhm.
down next to him. Next thing I know, I'm there for 20 minutes watching him.
Watching, watching some guy play Mario Brothers, which is like I could just play it myself, but
Yeah,
Yeah.
I thought it wasn't entertaining. But let's talk about watches, boys. What's the well, let's talk about let's Chris number one, my Chris. I mean, he had a few good additions to his collection. Chris, 2023, what edition you looking for?
As you know, my 40th is coming up in
You didn't have to tell
November,
people
so
that.
so I know, but yeah, that's coming up. So my goal is to add a sub no date for my 40th.
Sub no date.
My goal.
I actually prefer the sub no date over the date. I think it's just so much cleaner, even though the date is useful. What about you, Chris?
sub no date is nice. Um, I do prefer no date actually for myself, but
And
for myself this year, I'm going to actually be scaling back a little bit and selling some watches, and then uh, I started out the year pretty strong, so I don't know where I can go from here, but um, depends on what I can get, what I could sell, and move around. But I would love to get another, because I have a few Vacheron, and I would love to get another Vacheron this year. So
what do you have from Vacheron now?
I have an overseas World Timer, which have which I have for about 2 or 3 years. Then I have a Key to Lee, which is the titanium version with the sapphire dial, and then I have a traditional World Timer as well in rose gold.
That's a hell of a collection, I'll tell you one thing. Well, World Timer, probably agree or not, the most underappreciated complication in the watch. S- Actually, probably after the equation of time. The Quai de Lille is an amazing watch. That was actually Vacheron's first take on allowing the consumer to customize their watches.
Yep.
The problem is out of the gate, I think they were charging like extra $5,000 to do that if you wanted to change the color of the lugs or something, and I think they scaled it down to two or almost nothing, which kind of sucked. Another watch that I think is being slept on big time from Vacheron. You know, I know everybody wants the overseas. That's the Nautilus, that's the Royal Oak, but the World Time Traditionnel, the Quai de Lille, as you mentioned, I think very, very slept on pieces. Anytime I get a chance to pick up the Quai de Lille on a secondary, I always do. Not much around. For those that bought them, tend to keep them.
Yeah, that's probably the one. If I had to sell everything, if I had to get rid of everything that I have, that's probably one of the watches that I would try and hold on to the tightest, because it's titanium. It has this sapphire dial. It's just weird. It was not one of the ones. So when they came out with the option to sort of customize your own watch, they came out with a few versions that were just the standard versions, and those were the titanium with the sapphire dial. And they came out with like a dual time version, and then they had the standard time, and that's the one I got, the standard time. It's just titanium, doesn't have any precious metals. Love it, love that watch so much. But
I don't know about you. I don't know about 2023 in particular, but one of the things that, in fact, after having a conversation with that collector in Florida and that crazy house, which by the way, everybody said, Roman, you going producer Michael on me. I actually called producer Michael. I was talking to him about something else, and I'm like, Michael, I'm gonna pull a you in my first video for the new season. I was like, I'm going to some crazy house like to do this review like you do. It's like I told him, I said, in fact, I actually watched a couple of your videos. I'm not a house guy. You know what I mean? Like I actually watched a couple of his videos of him going through these houses, before we shot ours. But I spoke to the gentleman, Dove, who's a diehard watch collector, a guy that started, whose first watch was a Casio, which we're actually fixing right now. It's like a $20 watch that I'm getting completely overhauled because he's had it for so long, and it's such a great watch for him that I said, well, why is it just sitting there, head only, not working? Let me fix it for you, right? And he mentioned something, because he's a guy that wears nothing but big watches. He's got a humongous wrist. His wrist is 21 centimeters. Mine, I think, is 15. It's a big difference. And he put it this way: the new 50 millimeter Submariner, he wears that and it fits him fine, right? And I asked him the same question. He's like, you know what? Now that I've kind of gotten what I wanted, he's always gone for what he wants. A lot of divers watches because he dives, a lot of Panerais. He has the big 60 millimeter behemoth. He actually wore that while he was diving. A lot of 47 millimeter submersibles, all your 48 millimeters APs like the Legacy and the All Star, big watches. So I said, what's next? He said, I would like to own a watch from every single brand. Major brand. Jaeger, IWC, Piaget, Blancpain, and the list goes on, Vacheron. And I said, well, W, you're going to have a very tough time with majority of these brands, considering that there's no way in the world you're putting on a reverso, right? You can use that as a cuffling, right? And he's like, yeah, but there are options. And I thought about it, and I said, if I had to pick a watch from every single brand and own every single watch, I would probably go the route, or the hole that you're getting ready to fall into is that vintage route, right? To have the original IWC Portugueser, which today for, I think a white dot will set you back over $100,000. I would have the original reverser. We actually have one. I would have, some older IWC pilots and things of that nature. I think that's a great way to do things because you sort of make yourself unbiased, where you may not necessarily be buying the hottest and the latest and the greatest. And I think so. I think my goal going forward, not to steal Dove's idea, but I love that idea, to own a watch from every single major, regardless if it's a hot piece, expensive piece or not.
I remember a video that you did, it was a while ago, where you were looking at, I forget who you visited somebody. I'm sorry, I don't remember the name of the guy, but you were looking at vintage watches. And
Adam.
Was it Adam? And basically he said, why buy a new version when you could buy the original, which is actually, a limited edition, where the new, reissues and new watches are a manufactured collectible.
It's a question that I asked myself numerous times, and I finally gonna say that I figured out the answer. Again, this is my answer, my opinion, and everyone welcome to disagree with me. But I realized something, and you don't realize something until you realize it on your own skin, right? I've worn vintage watches that are super expensive, $300,000, $400,000, but on the wrist, they look like some old beat up watch. With the vintage pieces, and this is what ends up happening. The vintage world is very niche, it's very small. For those that know, most won't know, right? Most will see you wear that Blancpain, they won't think how much that watch really costs. They think it's whatever. Think of some of the vintage Omega Speedmasters that trade upwards of $200,000. The end of the day, it still looks like an Omega Speedy average one that costs $3,000 to $5,000. That's just beat the shit, right? And it's a really niche watch, and for those that know, right? Especially if it's a tropical dial or something like that. It takes out the flex factor. You really have to be okay with yourself to be able to put on and spend a lot of money on a big vintage piece, considering that you're gonna know there's gonna be a guy that's gonna walk in with a $28,000 retail Royal Oak, and he's gonna blow you out of the water every single time, even though a vintage Portugueser, right? Uh, Nobody's gonna know that's $135,000 watch. And like I said, a guy with a Submariner is gonna walk in, he's gonna get more clout in the room than you will with your vintage piece. And I think that's mostly the problem a lot of people have, myself included. I've went through that. It's just the same. And that's where the issue lies when it comes to vintage. And but I do agree. It's, why would you take a watch that's mass produced? Like people were paying 75,000 for a 15202 BC with a salmon dial, where at the same time you can pick up a 5402, the original Royal Oak from 1972-73, for less than that. The
Right.
choice is obvious. The good thing about the Royal Oak is still, even the old one still kind of looks like the current one, right? But this is the world that we live in, right? This is why, most guys will prefer to collect sports cars, current sports car versus vintage cars.
I mean,
Platinum Submariner for the anniversary this year, you think?
I don't see them making I don't see them doing that. I mean, I think platinum is forever going to be reserved for, your sky dwellers maybe at best, but for the most part that stuff has always been reserved for the Pearl Master line and the President line. So I don't really see that. I mean, if they did it, it'd be all the craze, I'm sure, but listen, the Platinum Daytona did really well, still is.
What were you
yeah.
gonna say, Chris? Sorry.
Oh, when I think it was like a couple of, I think it was the day before I came down to you guys to Luxury Bazaar and to pick up the 50 Fathoms. Blancpain released a new 42 millimeter anniversary edition of the 50 Fathoms. Now, the one thing that kept me from buying a modern 50 Fathoms was because it was in 45 millimeters. And then the sort of the special editions, limited editions, they were selling for well over retail for no reason. So I just couldn't bring myself to buy one of those. And, I immediately had FOMO. I was just like, am I doing the right thing? Should I be getting the vintage version? Maybe I should just try and get this new limited edition 42 mil, but then I think they only made like 70 per region or something crazy. So obviously not getting one of those, but I really did. I was like, maybe I shouldn't do it. And then I was like, no, I'm making the right decision. This is the right decision. But it's exactly what Roman said. When even if you're talking about those two watches, when you walk into a room and you see a guy with the 42 millimeter brand new, shiny with the sapphire bezel, it looks a lot more than this sort of subdued 42 millimeter, same exact size, but it just doesn't look as bright and new on your wrist. So it's not, it's that feeling of having a new watch, I guess.
James Duffy brings up a good point too. He said he wears a $4,000 Creedor, which is Seiko's high end lineup. If it's Seiko, then Grand Seiko, King Seiko, then Creedor, a lot of people wouldn't know you're wearing a $4,000 watch on the wrist there.
It's you have to do the impossible, and myself included. The minute you put on a watch that's somewhat subdued, that people may not know about, et cetera, in the back of your head, no matter how much of a diehard watch lover you may be, in the back of your head, you're still thinking about the flex, because that's the world that we live in. The watch industry is very much materialistic, right? A lot of guys out there buying it for the material value, for the fact that it represents a material value, I should say, rather, which is why the vintage world is that much smaller than that of a modern world. And, my friend Adam Golden from Mentor Watches, it's like, I'm sitting in his room, he pulls out, 5 watches that seem to look exactly alike, and between 1 and 3 there's a $100,000 price difference. He's like, well, you see that little dot and that little marker, and then you see the end links, and I'm like, dude, it looks exactly the same. He's like, no, you don't know what you're talking about. And but it gets really geeky. It gets really so detailed that it's like, best example is Zenith Daytona, right? So A Serial 2000, they discontinued the Zenith movement, finally go to their in-house movement. But 2001, the beginning of 2001, it was P Serial, right, for Rolex. Well, the first quarter of P Serial Daytona still had the Zenith movements. They still had some left over. They used them. So I think it goes up to I'm going to say 2 or 3. I think it's right under 2, where those first serial, like P1 and P2 million, were all still Zenith movements, right? And the difference in price, I mean, again, I'm not going to talk about today, but at the time I had both A's and P's. At the time I sold the A's, they were 30 grand. Now, mind you, these were watches that I put away a while ago. I think they all cost me under 10 grand, right? And I got 30 grand a piece for the A serials, but I got 50 grand a piece for the P serials. Can you tell the difference? No, you can't. So these flexes are so subtle in the vintage world that people don't see. But the minute you take a rainbow bezel and you slap it onto a Royal Oak, you can tell right away, or frosted. This is not a world we can ever get away from. And even the most avid collector, watch lover, in the back of his head, yourself included, Chris, you're gonna be like, hey, yeah, I love my Blancpain, but the 10 other guys in the room don't even know what the hell it is.
Yeah, it's like a car thing too. I mean, guys, there's not much that we could really flex with, right? You have your women have, like, they put the necklaces and earrings and do all the other, men
And
just
bags
have
and shoes and all
all that stuff. That's their way that, they walk into a restaurant and they're all decked out. A guy is just, I got a nice shirt on. Yeah, it's your watch, it's your car, and those are your 2 flex moments.
I don't remember who said it to me, but somebody said it. I don't remember who said that, but somebody said it really well, that their Ferrari is great, but you can't walk into a club wearing a Ferrari, So watch is definitely that big thing, which also is creating a sort of an issue in terms of safety, because 20 years ago people didn't know what a Audemars Piguet was when you walked into a club. Now a 7-year-old kid knows.
Yeah, it's become. Listen, I live and work in New York City. So when I go to New York, when I'm in the city and I'm, if I'm not just getting into my car and driving home, I'm wearing a Seiko. I'm wearing something that's not, I'm not going to wear, even though Vacheron is still kind of goes under the radar. I don't think anybody, like the average guy who doesn't know that much about watches really cares about them. But still, I don't even want to take the chance. New York is not what it used to be. And
Did you guys see what Wet Watches wrote? Cash is the only flex in Vegas club with a rubber band.
yes,
Can't disagree with that.
Yes, cash is king. Absolutely.
Well, we're going on to about an hour and a half, guys. You guys about ready to call it a night? I don't want to keep you guys up too late.
This was a lot of
Thank,
fun.
thanks for the
Roman,
thanks for the
thank you for
compliment.
joining.
Thanks for the compliment, Chris. He goes to me, he's like, I'm starting the live at 9. You know it's gonna be a little late for you. I'm like, yeah, well, that's when I put the kids to bed. But we should definitely do this again. Maybe invite some of the other guys. Average Joe. I saw Average Joe was on here. A couple other YouTube guys. The gentleman that you mentioned earlier, again, I forgot his name.
Design
The guy that
Atelier,
the guy
Jason.
yeah, and also the guy that just hit 12,000 subs. Who was that?
Bobby
Bobby
Legs.
Yeah. So I think
He was at Watch Time also. Yeah, I think you met him briefly at Watch Time too.
Yeah, so we got to do this again. Maybe invite more people next time and grab on jump on a live maybe a bit earlier.
Sure.
For us old folks. And but definitely good to chat with both of you. I mean, Chris, I just saw you literally seemed like it was 2 hours ago, but
couple hours ago. Yeah.
Yeah, so definitely should do this again. And thank you for everyone for tuning in as well.
Yeah, thank you everybody. Thanks everybody for joining in.
Thanks everybody. Thank you, Roman, for joining.
Of course.
I told Chris we'll have to go out there and have a good slice of pizza.
Well, Chris, I'll see you tomorrow. Chris, I'll see you later.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Have a good night, guys.
Get here, guys. Later, guys.
Have a good night.